Thank you, Daniele. Thank you, everyone. So last time I gave a talk at DjangoCon in 2015, I was very junior, very inexperienced, so hopefully this will be a bit better now, but we'll see. So today's topic is about privacy. Privacy is a hot topic for everyone who builds web applications, and I'm going to tell you some stories about my recent life, of how it is a hot topic for me, and I'm going to talk about some experiences that I had which were outside work through volunteering, where the children that I was teaching were asking me questions about privacy in a very surprising and, I think, interesting way. So, hello again. A bit about myself. I'm Hanna Kollo, a Hungarian, as Daniela said. I'm a senior software engineer, been in the industry for at least 15 years. I work with big data. That's what usually I say to people who are not in IT. For people who are in IT, I say a bit more. So I am working in a team at a big tech company, building a data analytics platform for this tech company. And about you, as I imagine, and my target audience, you are Django developers who build web applications, and these web applications do contain almost always some sort of user data. Therefore, privacy is a question. So what is actually user data in the context of today's talk? For example, in case of Google, your search query history is user data. Or in case of a social network, your tweets or posts or reels are user data. Personal photos, you upload them somewhere, that is user data in a next level way, very private. Location history is also user data, so if the app is location-based that you're using or you're developing, you think twice if you want to trust this application with sharing your location history or not. And comments and likes are also user data, maybe not that sensitive as location history. And there's metadata, which is also, in this context, user data. And in fact, I'm going to focus on that more. So metadata is like what pages you visited, what buttons you clicked, when did you click them, what was the chain of the clicks, how you got there. Because you actually can find out a lot about the user just by this metadata. So that's really very much in focus. And in fact, I'm going to focus this talk on the metadata mostly because I'm the principal, so I'm going to apply for all of them, but I'm going to focus on the metadata because everything else is domain specific. So if you have a finance app, then the finance rules apply, and that domain is even regulated regarding with regards to user data. Or if you do a health app, then that domain also has its rules. So for domain-specific user data, you need a specific talk per domain. So I'm not going to cover all of those. Let's focus on the metadata for today, and the principles will apply anyway for the others. Let me start with a small story. About 10 years ago, I created a hobby project in Django at home in my private time. And this project was a website where you could upload photos of your food. So the idea was that when you sit down in a restaurant or made a beautiful meal at home, you take a photo of it and you send it to your friends. So I wanted to build an app where you take a photo, you upload it to this website, and you see a news feed from other people who you follow with their photos, and you even can share the location of where you took this photo. That was the idea. And I built this. And I wanted to save some time, and I didn't want to implement the login mechanism myself, so I said I'm going to use social logins. So there's just some Django plugin or a library for using the Facebook authentication for logging into your website, so I'm going to just use that. And And I learned how to use the Facebook API and how to implement social login. And once I did that, I was a bit surprised because the thing is, if the user of your website agrees to use social login, then the website's developer, in this case me, gets a lot of information from that user, things that this user might not consciously would be willing to give you, but it's all hidden, so the user, especially if the user is not tech savvy, will not know. Things about like the full name of the user, the date of birth, the email address, anything public on their Facebook page, like are they married, who are their friends, all of this I got as the developer of this project just because the user agreed to use social login to my website. And as a developer, I was like, if my users would know this, I'm not sure they would like. I'm not sure they would like to give this data to me. I mean, my personal friends were my first users to this web application, so they would be okay with this, maybe. But even they would like, Hanna, you are a junior developer. I'm not sure what are you going to do with this data? Are you going to store it? I'm not sure what we're going to do with this in the future. And even unintentionally, your website might be subject to a cyber attack and the data might get stolen. So I'm not sure if I want to give this data to you. So I just had this thought, and I made a mental note about this being a problem. This really is a problem. And this website was about photos, so photos are really personal information, even if it's just about food. And especially if you share the location, then one level up, right? So I really need to not risk the trust that the users of this web application have in me with any sort of privacy incident or just sloppy handling of the topic of privacy, because I need to get and keep the trust of these users and the data that I store. So actually, I think 2/3 of the thinking went into the privacy concerns when I built this application, and only 1/3 went into the actual features and the development of it. That's the story. And now, fast forward 9 years. I work at a company which has an app with 1 billion users or more. So I work at Google, that's the company I work at. But by the way, I'm speaking here on my own account, paying my own tickets. I'm not speaking on behalf of Google. Anyway, I work in Google Maps, which is a location-based app. It has an Android app and an iOS app and a web surface. And it stores fine-grained location. So Google Maps is not working unless you give, most features of the app are not working unless you give the application permission for your fine-grained GPS-based location, right? So that's, I think, super sensitive data, especially if you have the history as well. I have a question to the audience. How many, raise your hand if you have used Google Maps today to navigate here. Thank you. Thank you, yes, most of the people. Just so you know, if you search for something, if you type something in a search bar, that is remembered, stored by Google for some time. If you clicked on a button, Google knows what you clicked, when you clicked it, where you were when you clicked it, in what order you visited the pages within Google Maps, and if you started navigation, where did you navigate to, how long that took, when did it start, when did it end, and so on. And Google stores it, this data, and keeps it for a long time. How long? It's all in the privacy policy. Did you read the privacy policy of Google? Yeah. Sorry, if it's an understanding question you can ask, but otherwise let's keep it for later. Okay. I also didn't read the privacy policy, by the way. I don't do that. They tend to be very legal text, and I wouldn't understand them anyway. And at work I have to read so many policies that I just save some time of not reading any extra one, which I don't have to. In case I have a legal question, I would then go and read the policy, but normally I would just click I read and accept and then move on. But yeah, what the point I'm trying to make here, that there is a serious privacy question here, so and rightfully so. So there's a lot of scrutiny from users like you, and from the media and legal entities for every application, but especially for big applications which have a lot of users and therefore more economic power and so on. So there's a lot of privacy scrutiny. So I learned a lot about how to handle user data at this big application, and I'm going to share you some learnings. So I think what you need to use as a guiding principle is that you have to wear two hats, as a developer, as a user, for everything that you do. And me at Google Maps, I'm a user and a developer, no question about that. And at my Django project, the hobby project, I was also a developer and a user at the same time. And I suppose when you create your own application, you are probably a user as well. So you need to wear those two hats. And sometimes you have to temporarily forget that you are a developer and only wear the user hat. Sometimes you need to wear both, and sometimes you need to wear just the developer hat. So I'm going to talk briefly about the problems we are facing. I gave you some tips and guidance, and I share some stories. So the problems we are facing as developers are, one, the users care about their data, as they should. So why is this a problem? It's because you must respect, you need to care about your users because you're building for them. You will not succeed without the users succeeding. There is power in your hands. Why is this a problem? Because with great power comes great responsibility. And great responsibility is, a weight on your shoulder, and you have to do work to fulfill that responsibility. Trust is hard to gain and easy to lose. I think I touched on this before. There might be privacy incidents. We have that every time in the news, that this and this company had leaked photos or leaked passwords and so on. You really don't want your web application to show up in the news in that way. And lastly, there are regulations. There's GDPR, which is, I think, a great regulation. And not every country has it, by the way, but at least in the EU, we are pretty good there. And there is DMA, which is more recent, and not a lot of people know about it. It's called Digital Market Act. It only applies to big applications. Big is defined by the law, so maybe your application is not subject to it, but maybe it is. Google Maps is certainly a subject to DMA. So DMA is about a rule that Google cannot share the data that it got in Google Maps. It cannot share that data with other parts of Google, for example, YouTube or search or ads, unless the user explicitly gives permission to that. So this is like siloing big companies into smaller chunks, and unless the user gives explicit permission to cross-share this data, they will not be able to, which is, in my opinion, a very good thing. However, it comes with annoying pop-ups with questions, which is like, annoying. Also, it doesn't apply for every country. For example, Switzerland doesn't have DMA because it's not in the EU. Also, the US doesn't have DMA. If you didn't hear about DMA, then you're lucky, because I did hear about DMA, and my team, which is managing the user data for Google, has worked on the DMA compliance for more than a year. I was working on it. Okay, tips and guidance. Data governance. Data governance is you should know what data you have, where you have it, for how long you want to keep it. Ideally, have automatic deletions at the end of this, so expire it automatically. And be careful about not leaking this data. Next, ACLs. You should ensure that only the people who absolutely need to access your user data have access to this user data, and only for the time and for the scope that you absolutely need to give them access to. It's a lot of bureaucracy, but you have to do this if you handle user data. Next, know the purpose of what you want to use this user data for, because the user gives you consent for a specific purpose, that you want to use it for showing targeted ads or personalized recommendations or train machine learning models or maybe sell it. Hopefully you don't want to sell it, but that could be a purpose. And lastly, anonymization. Anonymize your user data as soon as possible. And that's not an easy thing to do. So I'm going to dive into anonymization just a bit. This look like? Oh, okay. So I don't want to, sorry for the slides messed up. I don't want to spend too much here. I just wanted to put in this slide because I first thought I'm going to make this a very technical talk, but then I decided not to. But I still keep this slide in case you want to Google a bit more or research a bit more about how to do anonymization. There are two keywords you have to remember, and it's exactly those which are not visible. So first is K-anonymity, and the second is differential privacy. And in the interest of time, and because we are almost at the end of the day, I'm not going to dive into what those mean. Okay? You can take a photo if you want. I'm going to go next. So, I wanted to have this slide first. Bit of a personal story. In my free time, I'm doing volunteering work, and I'm teaching children. I teach them English and computer science, but in this particular case, I was just telling them about my life story to show them how is life as a software engineer. Earlier today at the Django Girls talk, there was a comment about how important it is to have role models. I think that's absolutely true. So I was trying to be a role model for these kids. And here comes the story part of the talk. These children always ask me very, very interesting questions. So, the stories. The questions I usually ask, like, if I search for something on Google, how long will Google remember it? I almost always get this question, and they almost always surprised by the answer. Like, I usually just say, more than a year. Wow, I didn't expect that. And then I get questions like, which app is more secure, WhatsApp or Signal? And that's just, they testing me because they usually know the answer. It's Signal. And what's your recommended way to send private photo to a friend? That's usually one of the most interesting questions. I'm not going to answer that here. And the most interesting question I got is the following. It's a bit long. If I am at home on the Wi-Fi network on my laptop and I open an incognito browsing window and I log into my Google account, but I'm not yet 13-year-old, so my Google account is linked to my mother's account through Family Link, and I search for something, will my mother see my search results? What I search for? That's the question. Smart kids. And this time we were sitting in a circle, and when this question happened, all the kids were at the edge of their seats, like, I really want to know the answer to this one. And I said, no, she won't, and I went, whew. Everyone went, whew. And that's the main story that I wanted to share. And one addition to this is, after this session, the teacher thanked me, and I said goodbye to the kids, and we went out. The teacher walked me out, and the teacher asked me, what's an incognito browsing window? Yeah. And these are the people, the teachers who are teaching the children, in this case 12 years old children, how to use the internet. I mean, it's very hard to be a teacher, especially if technology is, I have a high respect for the teacher, but their work is very hard, especially if technology is evolving so fast. So I don't want to make the teacher being ridiculed, but perhaps it's our job to actually help them with some materials to know what an incognito browsing window is and know a lot more so that they can teach the kids how to use the internet in a responsible way. So that was the most amazing question that I ever got, and I want to have some concluding thoughts. Basically, if you want to understand your user, you can learn a lot from children, because they will say exactly what they think, and they will not sugarcoat it for you, not like a grown-up would, even a friend who you trust. And if you talk to children, you will understand their concerns in a way that grown-ups will never tell you. And this applies to more broadly than privacy. Because even for UX design and other things, you can learn a lot from children. So my advice to you, learn from children when you design web applications. Thank you.